Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. Sloths can starve to death with a full stomach. Unlike most mammals, sloths have sacrificed their ability to regulate body temperature in order to conserve energy. Instead, they depend entirely on environmental conditions, and their body temperature can fluctuate by more than 18 degrees Fahrenheit in a single day. If they become too cold, the special microbes living in their stomachs can die, preventing the sloth from digesting the leaves it eats. Bismuth, the active ingredient in Pepto-Bismol, technically has no stable isotopes. However, its most stable and common isotope has a half-life more than 1 billion times the age of the universe. It is bismuth 209, which was long considered completely stable until scientists detected its radioactive decay in 2003. Its half-life is approximately 19 quintillion years, a duration so extraordinary that, for everyday purposes, bismuth can be treated as practically stable. This natural radioactivity is extremely weak and does not pose a significant danger in its usual applications. Sugar is not directly bad for teeth. Instead, it creates the perfect environment for bacteria in the mouth to thrive and produce acid as a byproduct, which is harmful to teeth. Some bacteria in dental plaque use sugars from food and produce acids that temporarily lower the pH of the mouth. These acids can dissolve minerals in tooth enamel in a process called demineralization. Saliva helps neutralize them and provides minerals that partially repair the enamel, but consuming sugary foods too frequently can prevent this recovery process from being sufficient and promote the development of cavities. The oldest surviving film in history is Roundhay Garden Scene, which dates back to 1888. It is a recording only a few seconds long, showing several people walking in a garden. It was filmed by French inventor Louis Le Prince on October 14th of that year in Roundhay, England, using an experimental single-lens camera. The footage shows members of Le Prince's family and acquaintances. Curiously, one of the women seen in the film, Sarah Whitley, died just 10 days after this historic sequence was recorded. The snake Rhabdophis tigrinus is one of the very few snakes in the world that is both venomous through its bite and poisonous through ingestion or contact. Known as the tiger keelback, it lives mainly in Japan and other parts of East Asia. In addition to producing venom that it can inject through its rear teeth, it has special glands in its neck where it stores toxins obtained from the toads it eats. When threatened, it arches its neck and exposes these glands, which can release defensive substances. Females can even transfer some of these toxins to their offspring before they are born. A supernova occurs approximately every 10 seconds in the observable universe. If 1% of the affected systems had planets capable of supporting life, one would be destroyed every 17 minutes. If 1% of those had intelligent life, a civilization would be wiped out every 28 hours. Supernovas release extraordinary amounts of energy in just a few seconds and can affect planets located dozens of light years away. In addition to intense radiation, they produce and disperse heavy elements such as iron, calcium, and oxygen, materials that can later become incorporated into new stars and planets. SpongeBob SquarePants has been credited with raising awareness of Leif Erikson Day outside Norwegian American communities. The celebration appears in the episode Bubble Buddy, which premiered in 2000, when SpongeBob remembers that it is Leif Erikson Day and celebrates it with his distinctive Viking greeting. The date is officially observed in the United States every October 9th and honors the Norse explorer who reached North America centuries before Christopher Columbus. The reference in the show helped introduce many young viewers to a holiday that previously had little presence in popular culture. Camels and llamas can produce offspring called camas, but unlike mules, which come from a horse and a donkey, this can only be achieved through artificial insemination because of the difference in size. For example, an adult camel can weigh up to 6 times as much as a llama. The first documented cama was born in Dubai in 1998 as part of a project to combine traits from both species. These hybrids lack the camel's characteristic hump and have a coat more similar to that of a llama, although they retain long legs and a build that is intermediate between their parents. The Allies raided a German chemical company in 1944 and questioned a chemist because of the amount of radioactive material involved. However, they learned that he was not working on nuclear weapons, but on a radioactive toothpaste known as Duramad, which used radiation to kill germs. Some samples are now in a museum. Tuberculosis used to be associated with vampires. When one member of a family died from the disease, the other infected family members would slowly lose their health. People believed this was because the original person with tuberculosis was consuming the life of the other family members. During the height of the dot-com bubble, Cisco was the most valuable company in the world. Then, its stock price fell 88% in 2 years and never returned to that record value. In 2007, Hamburg Mannheimer International, now part of Munich Re, organized a party in Budapest with 20 sex workers to reward 100 of its top salespeople during a training period. When Napoleon died in exile on the island of St. Helena in 1821, his doctor secretly removed his penis during the autopsy and gave it to a priest, who smuggled it to Corsica. The Little White Schoolhouse, built in 1853 in Ripon, Wisconsin, is the birthplace of the Republican Party. The first meeting was held on March 20, 1854, to oppose the expansion of slavery. This meeting, and another held in Jackson, Michigan on July 6th, led to the formation of the Republican Party. Honey Nut Cheerios cereal has not contained nuts since 2006. The nutty flavor comes from a mixture of peach and apricot pits. Before that change, the recipe used real almonds, but they were later replaced with natural almond flavoring. Interestingly, this type of flavor can be obtained from the seeds or pits of fruits in the same botanical family as almonds, such as peaches and apricots. Despite keeping the word nut in its name, the modern recipe retains its distinctive sweet honey and almond flavor without using whole nuts. A California Supreme Court ruling in 2022 allowed bumblebees to be considered a protected species because they met the state's legal definition of fish. Facing financial difficulties, the Shah of Persia once agreed to sell virtually his country's entire infrastructure to Paul Reuter, founder of Reuters, in what was considered the most complete surrender of a kingdom's industrial resources in history. The proposal was rejected by the British, who considered it far too excessive. Near the end of her life, Ada Lovelace underwent a religious transformation and began to regret the way she had lived. After confessing something to her husband 3 months before her death, he abandoned her sickbed. What she told him remains unknown. Under the Invention Secrecy Act, the United States government can prevent certain patent applications from being disclosed if it believes the invention poses a threat to national security. Inventors can be prohibited from sharing or profiting from their own creations without even knowing the reason. The reason your mouth can feel strange after eating spinach is due to a chemical reaction popularly known as spinach teeth. Spinach contains oxalic acid, which can react with calcium in saliva to form tiny calcium oxalate crystals. These crystals can temporarily stick to the surface of the teeth and produce that characteristic rough or gritty sensation. The phenomenon is completely different from having food stuck between your teeth and usually disappears shortly after eating. Interestingly, cooking spinach can reduce some of its oxalate content, although it does not necessarily eliminate this unusual sensation completely. The boredom room is an employee exit management strategy in which workers are transferred to another department where they are assigned meaningless tasks until they become discouraged and resign. This strategy is commonly used in countries with strict labor laws, such as France and Japan. Pirates and buccaneers sometimes practiced matelotage, a custom in which male partners agreed to share their income and inherit their companion's belongings in the event of death. This practice is documented especially among Caribbean buccaneers during the 17th and 18th centuries. The agreement could establish that both men shared property, earnings, and responsibilities, providing a degree of financial security in an extremely dangerous occupation. The word comes from the French matelot, meaning sailor or shipmate. Although some modern interpretations have attributed a romantic nature to these unions, historical sources do not allow us to conclude that this was necessarily the case in every agreement. Operators from a top-secret special operations group during the Vietnam War had trouble concealing their footprints on Viet Cong trails, and even tested special boots with soles designed to mimic bare feet. Eventually, they collected 20,000 pairs of boots from United States field hospitals and dropped them from the air over North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong territory. The phosphorus used in fertilizers for food production is considered a finite, non-renewable resource that will eventually run out. Most of it comes from phosphate rock mined from deposits that took millions of years to form. It is an essential nutrient for plants, and no other element can replace it in biological processes. In addition, a large portion of known reserves is concentrated in a small number of countries. For this reason, there is growing interest in recovering phosphorus from wastewater, manure, and agricultural waste so it can be reused as fertilizer and reduce dependence on new mining. Beneath Grand Central Terminal in New York City is a huge hidden basement called M42, which was once a target during World War II. It remained secret for decades and is large enough to hold 2 football fields, containing key equipment used to supply power to the terminal. Most 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles actually contain more than 1,000 pieces. Robert Levinson disappeared on March 9, 2007, while working as a private investigator in Iran. Levinson flew to Kish Island to meet Daoud Salahuddin, an American fugitive, as part of an unauthorized CIA mission. Before his disappearance, photos showing Levinson alive were sent to his family in 2011. United States Air Force officer John Stapp survived a deceleration of 46.2 g during a rocket sled experiment in 1954, experiencing a rapid stop from about 632 miles per hour to 0 in just 1.4 seconds. Maryland, My Maryland was Maryland's state song until 2021. It is set to the melody of "Oh Christmas Tree." There are also Michigan, My Michigan, Florida, My Florida, and the Song of Iowa, the current state song of Iowa, all set to the same melody. Terry Burns, David Bowie's half-brother who had schizophrenia, was a significant influence on his musical career. In fact, his song, All the Mad Men, is about Terry. One of the most popular brands of artificial blood for theater actually tastes like mint. It is known as Kensington Gore, a name that became almost a generic term for stage blood used in British productions. Some of its formulas were designed to be more comfortable for actors to put in their mouths, so they included flavorings such as mint. Theatrical blood can be made in different colors and consistencies depending on whether it needs to look fresh or dried, or work properly on camera and under stage lighting. The Amazon River discharges more water than the next 7 largest rivers in the world combined. On average, it releases around 7 million cubic feet of water per second into the Atlantic Ocean, although this amount increases considerably during the rainy season. Its discharge represents approximately 1/5 of the fresh water carried by all the world's rivers into the oceans. The amount is so enormous that Amazon River water reduces the salinity of the Atlantic and can be detected hundreds of miles from its mouth. Its basin also spans parts of several South American countries and is the largest drainage basin in the world. In ancient times, there were giant penguins that were the size and weight of an adult man. Some prehistoric species reached remarkable proportions, especially during the Paleocene and Eocene epochs. Kumimanu fortisei, known from fossils found in New Zealand, may have weighed more than 330 pounds, several times as much as a modern emperor penguin. Other giant penguins stood well over 5 feet tall. These animals lived millions of years after the extinction of non-avian dinosaurs, when ocean conditions favored the evolution of enormous seabirds. More than 60% of tooth decay involves genetic factors. Some twin studies have found that susceptibility to developing cavities has a significant hereditary component. Genes can influence characteristics such as the composition and amount of saliva, enamel structure, tooth shape, and the immune response to bacteria in the mouth. However, diet, fluoride exposure, and hygiene habits also play a fundamental role. Even among people with a similar genetic predisposition, there can be major differences depending on these environmental factors. A Giffen good is a product that people consume more of as its price increases, and vice versa, violating the law of demand. A classic example is a low-quality staple food whose demand is driven by poverty, preventing buyers from purchasing higher-quality foods. As the price of the cheap staple rises, buyers can no longer afford to supplement their diet with better foods and are forced to consume more of the staple. Legendary session bassist Leland Sklar installed a switch on his bass that does absolutely nothing, which he calls the producer switch. When a producer asks him for a different sound, he flips the switch while making sure the producer sees him do it and then continues playing. Sklar says this placebo has saved him a lot of trouble. The first time an asteroid impact on Earth was predicted before it occurred was in 2008. The object, designated 2008 TC3, was discovered by the Catalina Sky Survey only about 20 hours before entering Earth's atmosphere. Astronomers quickly calculated its trajectory and determined that it would impact northern Sudan. The asteroid, about 13 feet in diameter, broke apart in the atmosphere and produced a brilliant fireball over the Nubian desert. Hundreds of fragments, known as the Alma-Ata-Sita meteorites, were later recovered, making it possible for the first time to study samples from an asteroid whose trajectory had been observed before it fell. There are streetcars that survived the bombing of Hiroshima and are still in use today. They are known as Hibakudensha, or atomic bomb-affected streetcars, and belong to Hiroshima's transit system. Some were located only a few miles from the hypocenter when the explosion occurred on August 6, 1945. Remarkably, streetcar service began to resume just 3 days after the bombing. Some of those vehicles were repaired and preserved, and at least one continues to operate special services, becoming a moving testament to the city's history. During the rescue of Captain Phillips from the Maersk, Alabama from Somali pirates, the $30,000 in cash they took from the ship disappeared. 2 members of SEAL Team 6 were investigated but never charged, and the money was never recovered. The grunion fish has unusual mating habits. Females bury themselves in the sand, tail first up to their necks, so that only their heads remain exposed. A group of males then sprays sperm over the female's head, and it runs down her body until it reaches the eggs beneath the sand. The Astrodome, the world's first multi-purpose domed sports stadium, had a luxurious apartment installed by its creator and owner, Houston Judge Roy Hofheinz. Over a 6-month period, 2,055 brown recluse spiders were collected from a house built in the 19th century in Lenexa, Kansas. Estimates showed that at least 400 of the spiders were large enough to deliver a venomous bite. A family of 4 had been living there since 1996 and had never been bitten, despite seeing the spiders on multiple occasions. The native language of the volcanic island of Manamotu has no words for cardinal directions such as north, east, west, and south. Instead, it uses polar coordinates with words meaning toward the volcano, toward the sea, clockwise around the volcano, and counterclockwise around the volcano. In 2021, a chess controversy occurred in India during a charity match between billionaire Nikhil Kamath and a grandmaster. It was revealed that the billionaire cheated by enlisting several chess experts and using computers to make perfect moves. Kamath owned a stock brokerage company. Ulysses S. Grant was supposed to attend the play during which Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. John Wilkes Booth also planned to assassinate Grant. However, at the last minute, Grant decided to go to New Jersey to visit his children instead of attending the performance. The song Down Under by the band Men at Work uses the melody of a children's song called Kookaburra, and the band was sued over it. A group of Jews arrived in China around the 10th century and settled in the heart of the country, in Hunan province, through which the Yellow River flows. They maintained their Jewish identity, traditions, and even the Hebrew language until the mid-19th century, when the community finally disintegrated as a result of war. Gorgonzola is one of the oldest known blue cheeses, having been created around the year 879 AD, although it is said not to have developed blue veins until around the 11th century. Nicolas Cage hired a person with alcoholism to follow him everywhere so he could imitate his behavior for the movie Leaving Las Vegas. The National COVID Memorial Wall is a wall about 1,640 feet long, created in 2020 along the River Thames in London to commemorate the lives lost to COVID in the United Kingdom. It features more than 240,000 individually hand-painted red hearts, each representing a victim. Many of the hearts contain messages left by mourners or volunteers. The United States Navy has a marine mammal program that trains dolphins and sea lions to detect, locate, mark, and recover objects in harbors, coastal areas, and deep ocean waters. There is a whale known as the 52 Hertz whale, also called 52 blue, belonging to an unidentified species that has never been sighted but whose existence has been known through its calls since the late 1980s. A feature-length documentary was even made about it, with Leonardo DiCaprio serving as an executive producer. Catherine O'Hara has her internal organs reversed, a condition known as situs inversus. The actress discovered this unusual feature when she was young after undergoing medical examinations. In people with this condition, organs such as the heart, liver, and stomach may be located on the opposite side from where they normally are, as if the internal anatomy were reflected in a mirror. Situs inversus is rare and is estimated to occur in approximately 1 out of every 10,000 people. In many cases, it causes no health problems, and people with the condition can live completely normal lives without needing treatment. During the filming of Barry Lyndon in Ireland in 1974, director Stanley Kubrick received a phone call warning him that the IRA had placed him on a target list and giving him 24 hours to leave the country. He left in less than 12 hours, with only one-third of the movie completed. A team of veterinarians used three-dimensional printing to replace part of a cat's skull in 2019. The cat made a full recovery. The animal needed the procedure after doctors discovered a tumor that required the removal of a considerable portion of its skull bone. To protect the brain, a custom implant was designed based on medical images of its head and manufactured using three-dimensional printing. The piece was specifically fitted to the area removed during the operation. This type of technology makes it possible to create implants tailored to the particular anatomy of each animal and has already been used in various complex veterinary procedures. Vatican City leads the world in per capita wine consumption because of its sacramental use. On the island of New Guinea, there are several species of green lizards that have green bones, green hearts, green tongues, and green blood. They belong to the genus Prasinohema, a group of skinks whose extraordinary coloration is caused by extremely high concentrations of biliverdin, a green pigment produced during the breakdown of red blood cells. These levels would be harmful to many other vertebrates, but these lizards can tolerate them. Most interestingly, this trait evolved independently several times during their evolution, so scientists study how they developed such remarkable resistance. Levi Hutchins created the first mechanical alarm clock in the United States in 1787 because he wanted to wake up at 4 in the morning every day, so his device was set only for that specific time. Another 60 years passed before Antoine Redier made one that could be set to a different time. Tom Sawyer author Mark Twain invented fasteners commonly used on women's bras. In 1871, he received a patent for an adjustable and detachable strap for garments that used small hooks and loops. Twain intended his invention to replace suspenders and make different garments easier to adjust. Although his design was not created specifically for bras, the same hook and loop fastening principle would eventually become widely used in these garments. The patent is one of the lesser-known aspects of the writer, who also had a strong interest in inventions and the new technologies of his time. Natalie Portman published articles in 2 scientific journals while studying at Harvard. She co-authored a study titled Frontal Lobe Activation During Object Permanence, Data from Near-Infrared Spectroscopy. In the Middle Ages, beets were used to treat illnesses related to digestion and the blood. By the mid-17th century, wine was often colored with beet juice, and in Europe after World War I, food shortages caused many hardships, including Mangelwurzel disease, caused by eating nothing but beets. The Tsavo man-eaters were a pair of male lions that systematically hunted and killed railroad workers in 1898. The Panopticon prison design used guards positioned in the center to create the illusion of constant surveillance, ensuring low-cost control over inmates' behavior. Goku's power level was not originally over 9,000, but over 8,000. The change was made in the English dub. Aphantasia is a condition that affects approximately 1 to 3% of people and consists of the mind or imagination being unable to visualize images. People with aphantasia cannot picture anything in their mind. The Unicode system uses elephants as a reference comparison for cultural frequency when considering whether to add a new emoji. In 2012, a man sued Mountain Dew after finding a mouse inside a can. The company defended itself by arguing that if the mouse had remained in the can for 15 months, it would have dissolved. The case was settled. Edgar Allan Poe advocated for the territory of the United States of America to be renamed Appalachia instead. Saltwater pools are not very salty, and there is a common misconception that they do not use chlorine. In reality, saltwater pools are only mildly salty or almost imperceptibly salty to the taste, and they have chlorine levels similar to those of conventionally chlorinated pools. During the siege of Leningrad in World War II, 28 scientists chose to starve to death while protecting the Vavilov Institute seed bank rather than eat the seeds. Dictator Muammar Gaddafi had a strange obsession with United States Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. He commissioned Libya's most famous composer to write a song for her titled Black Flower in the White House. And opposition fighters found a photo album filled with pictures of her beside his bed. In 2012, A group of British students edited the Wikipedia article about the electric toaster and inserted the false claim that a man named Alan McMasters had invented the toaster in 1893. The false article was cited by newspapers and other organizations until the hoax was exposed in July 2022. Local resistance on Crete during World War II was so fierce that civilians attacked Axis paratroopers as they landed, using knives, axes, scythes, and even their bare hands. Six Flags theme parks get their name from the six flags that have flown over Texas, including the Confederate, American, Spanish, Mexican, French, and Republic of Texas flags. Ivan VI of Russia, who ascended the throne at only 2 months old, was overthrown by his cousin Elizabeth Petrovna after just 1 year of reign. He spent the next 20 years of his life secretly imprisoned without the guards knowing his true identity before being killed during a rescue attempt. Flat-faced dog breeds, such as pugs and bulldogs, suffer from a condition known as brachycephalic syndrome, which causes significant breathing problems due to the compression of their skull structure. This trait is bred purely for appearance, but it can lead to chronic respiratory problems and even death. The American chestnut, a tree that grew up to about 100 feet tall, once made up 25% of the forests in the eastern United States, produced tons of food, and formed the backbone of the country's industrial development, lost 99.9% of its population due to a catastrophic blight. John L. Burns, a 70-year-old veteran of the War of 1812 who was caught in the crossfire during the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, after being released from Confederate captivity, immediately arrested traitorous stragglers and took up his flintlock musket against the rest. In China, water is typically drunk hot, even on very hot days. This custom is deeply rooted, and hot water dispensers are commonly found in homes, offices, train stations, and other public places. For a long time, boiling water was also a practical way to reduce the risk of illnesses transmitted through contaminated water. The habit remained even after modern water supply systems improved. In Chinese restaurants, it is common to be served hot water or tea with a meal, while many people carry thermoses so they can have hot water throughout the day. Coelacanths and other lobe-finned fish are more closely related to humans than to other fish, such as sharks and salmon. Humans belong to the same major evolutionary lineage of sarcopterygians, whose members are characterized by fleshy fins supported by internal bones. The first tetrapods, the ancestors of amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, emerged from this group. Modern coelacanths retain an anatomy reminiscent of ancient sarcopterygians, although they are not our direct ancestors. Their closest living relatives among lobe-finned fish include lungfish, which are considered even more closely related evolutionarily to tetrapods. Modern broiler chickens have been bred to gain weight so quickly that this can cause skeletal deformities. Decades of genetic selection have allowed them to reach market weight in a fraction of the time required by birds in the mid-20th century. Their rapid growth and large body mass can place considerable strain on their legs and joints, increasing the incidence of mobility problems and skeletal disorders. To reduce these problems, some producers use slower-growing breeds and adjust factors such as feeding, available space, and raising conditions. From the 1940s through the 1960s, the Lysol brand was used as a contraceptive and feminine hygiene product. During those years, some advertisements promoted the brand's disinfectants for so-called feminine hygiene, a term that sometimes served as an indirect reference to birth control. The campaigns appeared in numerous magazines and presented the product as part of married life. This practice eventually disappeared as safer and more effective contraceptive methods became widespread and awareness increased about the risks of using disinfectants in this way. While practicing for the 1992 Olympics, the Dream Team lost 62-54 against a team made up of top NCAA players. Head coach Chuck Daly limited Michael Jordan's playing time and made other less-than-optimal substitutions to deliberately give away the game and teach the NBA players that they were not invincible. The famous dialogue about pecan pie in the movie When Harry Met Sally was completely improvised. In fact, there is a moment in the scene when Meg Ryan can be seen looking off-camera at director Rob Reiner with a confused expression. No movie has ever won all 4 acting awards at the Oscars: Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Supporting Actress. Only 3 movies have managed to win 3 of the 4 awards: A Streetcar Named Desire, network, and everything everywhere all at once. Nerds candy is not considered vegan because some varieties are made with red carmine coloring, which is obtained from crushed insects. This pigment, also known as cochineal, is produced from small insects that live mainly on certain cacti and has been used for centuries to create deep red shades. Not all varieties of nerds contain exactly the same ingredients, so their composition can vary depending on the flavor and packaging. Carmine is also used in some foods, beverages, and cosmetic products. Britney Spears' song, Baby One More Time, was heard by Simon Cowell, who immediately knew it would be a hit. Cowell offered songwriter Max Martin an Aston Martin car if he gave the song to his boy band Five Dive, whose members began writing the verses. However, Martin had already promised the song to Britney. Shortly before being killed by Native American warriors, General George Custer testified before Congress about corruption in the Bureau of Indian Affairs. In 1876, Custer testified before a House committee investigating irregularities involving trading posts and the supply of goods to reservations. His accusations implicated people connected to the administration of President Ulysses S. Grant and sparked an intense political confrontation. Just a few weeks later, Custer returned to active duty and took part in the campaign against the Lakota and Cheyenne. He died on June 25th of that same year during the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Dana Carvey underwent coronary bypass surgery for a blocked artery, but the surgeon operated on the wrong artery. He eventually won a lawsuit against the hospital for $7,500,000, all of which was donated to charity. The first air raid on the German capital during World War II was carried out on the night of June 7, 1940, by a French long-range Farman F-233.4 bomber, nicknamed Jules Verne. The crew dropped bombs manually, mainly targeting the Siemens factory, and successfully returned to their base in France. Julius Schmid arrived in New York City as a penniless German immigrant who was partially paralyzed. He found work as a sausage maker, where he began selling leftover animal intestines as condoms. He turned this idea into a multi-million-dollar business and was eventually called the undisputed king of condoms. Between 2006 and 2009, Bob Dylan hosted his own weekly one-hour radio show called Theme Time Radio Hour. Instead of being organized by musical genre, the songs in each episode focused on a specific lyrical theme, such as weather, money, or flowers. Neutrinos are so tiny that one of them could travel through a light year of lead before having a 50% chance of colliding with a lead atom. These subatomic particles interact with matter so rarely that enormous numbers of them constantly pass through our bodies and the entire planet without leaving a trace. Every second, tens of billions of neutrinos from the sun pass through every square centimeter of Earth. To detect them, scientists build enormous observatories underground, beneath mountains or in Antarctic ice, using vast amounts of material to increase the chances of recording one of their extremely rare interactions. To pay off $30,000 in legal costs from a lawsuit filed by Wendy Carlos, musician Momus commissioned 30 songs on his next album for $1,000 each. Each song was dedicated to the person who paid for it. The opposite of an exorcism is an adorcism, the practice of inviting positive spirits to enter places or people. The term is used mainly in anthropology and religious studies to describe rituals in which spirit possession is not necessarily viewed as something that should be expelled. In certain traditions, deliberate contact is sought with an entity considered beneficial, protective, or ancestral. These rituals can include music, dancing, chanting, and trance states, and are often led by people with specific religious roles. Unlike exorcism, their purpose may be to receive guidance or protection, or to establish a ritual relationship with the spirit. During World War II, the Germans spent the modern equivalent of $100 million to build an underground base in Poland that saw little or no use. Shortly after building it, they lost the war, and today it is one of the largest bat habitats in Europe. Albert Einstein was not awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on special relativity and the equivalence of mass and energy, which gave rise to the famous equation E equals mc squared, but for his discovery of the law of the photoelectric effect. Humans become negatively buoyant at a depth of approximately 50 feet, at which point they begin to sink rather than float. Freedivers take advantage of this by allowing themselves to free fall, stopping their swimming and letting gravity carry them deeper. A Romanian Orthodox priest and 4 nuns were imprisoned after accidentally causing the death of another nun in 2005 during an exorcism, after mistaking symptoms of her schizophrenia for demonic possession. In the 1996 movie Scream, there is a section in the credits that says, "No thanks whatsoever to the Santa Rosa City School District Governing Board." The Santa Rosa Board revoked filming permits at the last minute, costing the production $350,000. Comet Swift-Tuttle is the largest comet that makes repeated close approaches to Earth. A collision would release 27 times the energy of the impact that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. It has been described as the single most dangerous object known to humanity. Tetrahymena thermophila, a single-celled ciliated eukaryote, has 7 different sexes. Any 2 sexes can mate and produce offspring, and the offspring's sex can be any of the 7 different types. This allows for 21 different mating combinations. The salt flats of western India are home to a wild ass sanctuary dedicated to protecting the Indian wild ass, a species that was once on the brink of extinction. The Wild Ass Sanctuary is located in the Little Rann of Kutch in the state of Gujarat and protects thousands of square miles of salt flats, grasslands, and desert areas. It is home to the last major population of the Kur, a subspecies of the Asiatic wild ass. Its population has recovered considerably after decades of conservation, rising from only a few hundred animals in the 20th century to several thousand today. The first item securely purchased over the internet was a compact disc of Sting's album 10 Summoner's Tales. It sold for $12.48 plus shipping. The sound produced by a cracking whip is caused by a sonic boom generated when the tip of the whip moves faster than the speed of sound. The whip was also the first man-made object to break the sound barrier. When the motion is performed, a wave travels along the whip toward its increasingly narrow end, causing a small section to reach supersonic speeds. High-speed photography has made it possible to observe this phenomenon and shows that the characteristic crack does not simply come from the tip striking an object. A whip can exceed the speed of sound without touching any surface. On May 26, 2022, the last convicted Salem witch was officially exonerated, 329 years after being found guilty. This happened after pressure from school students who discovered the anomaly that had left Elizabeth Johnson Jr.'s name out of the Massachusetts legislature's law exonerating all the others. After the release of the Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer, the featured Tom Petty song "Love is a Long Road" saw an increase of nearly 37,000% in Spotify streams, received nearly 250,000 searches on Shazam, and reached number 2 on iTunes worldwide. Milvina Dean was the last survivor of the Titanic, and also the youngest person traveling aboard the ship. She was just over 2 months old when the Titanic sank in the early hours of April 15, 1912. Dean credited her survival to her father, who managed to get his wife and children onto a lifeboat. Milvina was one of approximately 700 people who survived, while her father was among the more than 1,500 who died. A movie based on the video game Far Cry was released in 2006. Directed by Uwe Boll, it was a major box office failure, earning only $743,000 against a budget of $30 million. O'Neill cylinders are space habitats proposed by physicist Gerard K. O'Neill. They consist of 2 rotating cylinders that generate artificial gravity and contain cities, farmland, and landscapes with sunlight directed by mirrors, creating a habitable environment for long-term stays. During the French Revolution, more than 4 million volumes were burned, including 25,000 medieval manuscripts. Much of these losses was connected to the destruction and dispersal of libraries belonging to monasteries, religious institutions, and members of the nobility. At the same time, revolutionary authorities confiscated enormous collections of books, many of which were transferred to public repositories and later helped enrich French libraries. The affected material included religious works, historical documents, and texts copied by hand centuries before the printing press. The period therefore produced a massive reorganization of France's literary heritage, as well as the loss of works that could never be recovered. The Robertson family attempted to sail around the world in the 1970s. Their vessel sank in the Pacific Ocean after orcas struck their boat, but the family survived for 38 days in an inflatable raft before being rescued. During World War II, English soldiers used passwords containing sounds that did not exist in the languages of their enemies. This allowed them to identify whether an unknown person was an enemy soldier attempting to infiltrate based on how accurately the person pronounced those sounds. According to a report published by the Federation of American Scientists, the United States government produces more classified information than unclassified information. Charlie Cox failed an audition for the Han Solo movie because he had become accustomed to avoiding eye contact while playing Daredevil. There is a place called the Cave Without a Name near San Antonio, Texas. In 1940, a statewide contest was held to name the cave, and the winner was a boy who said the cave was too beautiful to have a name. The boy received a $50 cash prize. The Cave Without a Name is currently a National Natural Landmark. In 1981, Locus magazine made an error with the title of Gene Wolfe's next novel, The Citadel of the Autarch, and announced that it would be called The Castle of the Otter. Wolfe found the mistake so amusing that the following year he published a book titled The Castle of the Otter. The inventor of the Heimlich maneuver, Dr. Henry Heimlich, did not actually use it to save someone's life until he was 96 years old, 4 decades after inventing it. It happened in 2016. When a resident at his senior living center began choking during dinner. Heimlich personally performed the technique he had introduced in 1974 and successfully dislodged the food blocking her airway. The woman, who was 87 years old, recovered quickly. Heimlich had spent decades promoting the procedure, which became widely taught as a first aid technique for choking emergencies. The doctor died just a few months later, in December of that same year, at the age of 96. Strongheart was a male German shepherd who became one of the first canine movie stars. Originally trained as a police dog, he served with the German Red Cross during World War I. Tragically, he suffered burns in an accident involving a hot studio light and died at the age of 11 on June 4, 1929. On the rare occasions when it fills completely, Katithanda Lake Eyre becomes the largest lake in Australia, covering an area of up to about 3,667 square miles. The year 2024 was when the United States Department of Health and Human Services prohibited hospitals from allowing breast, pelvic, prostate, and rectal examinations to be performed without prior consent for educational and training purposes by medical students and professionals on patients under anesthesia. When Henry Kissinger publicly threatened countermeasures during a press conference amid the oil crisis if the OPEC embargo was not lifted, the Saudis responded by threatening further oil cuts and to burn their oil fields if the United States military invaded. The CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology created the lithium-ion battery in the mid-1960s and later declassified it for use in the public sector. Aikichi Kuboyama, a Japanese fisherman, was the first known victim of radiation exposure from a hydrogen bomb. He was aboard the Lucky Dragon No. 5, a fishing boat caught in the radioactive fallout from the Castle Bravo hydrogen bomb test conducted by the United States in 1954 near Bikini Atoll. The United States government once sued a 14-pound solid gold rooster because it did not believe it had the right to be a 14-pound solid gold rooster. The 14-pound solid gold rooster won the case. Film score composer Hans Zimmer played synthesizers in the first music video broadcast on MTV, which was Video Killed the Radio Star. Between 1998 and 1999, when the #1 song on Total Request Live changed, on 55 of those occasions, the change was from a Backstreet Boys song to an NSYNC song, or vice versa. Cavity Sam is the name of the patient in the game Operation. He is the character who suffers from writer's cramp, water on the knee, butterflies in the stomach, a twisted knee, and a broken heart, among other ailments. Only one song used in the movie Singin' in the Rain was completely new. All the other songs, including Singin' in the Rain, had already been used in earlier movies in one form or another. The GI piano, also known as the Victory Vertical, was an instrument manufactured by Steinway for the United States Armed Forces and designed to be used in all kinds of environments. Its size allowed it to be transported aboard a ship or dropped by parachute from an airplane, while also withstanding the humidity of the South Pacific. The last cavalry charge by the United States Army in combat took place in 1942. American soldiers did not ride horses into combat again until Army Green Berets used them in October 2001. The state motto of Maryland is in Italian, Fatti maschi, parole femmine. It literally translates as, deeds are masculine, words are feminine. But the official translation was, manly deeds, womanly words. In 2017, the state legislature established that it means strong deeds, gentle words. The S in Harry S. Truman's name was not an abbreviation. His middle name was literally just the letter S. Adam Jashinsky, winner of the 9th season of Big Brother in the United States, was later convicted of running an oxycodone trafficking ring, which he financed with the winnings he received from the show. There was a case in the United States in which a person did not die during an execution in the electric chair. His lawyers tried to argue that he had legally already been executed, so subjecting him to a second attempt would be cruel. Outback Steakhouse was inspired by the popularity of the movie Crocodile Dundee. Its founders, who had never been to Australia, decided to capitalize on the rustic, carefree atmosphere of Australian culture for their Australian-themed restaurant. A sixth basic taste has been discovered, in addition to salty, sweet, bitter, sour, and umami. The sixth is ammonium chloride, a taste that can signal toxicity, but is also part of a popular Scandinavian candy known as salty licorice. In 1797, Fath Ali Shah, the second Shah of Iran, received a complete set of the third edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, which he read in its entirety. After this achievement, he expanded his royal title to include Most Formidable Lord and Master of the Encyclopedia Britannica. In 1926, Harry Houdini debated in Congress for 4 days, trying to convince lawmakers to pass his bill, House Resolution 89, which would have banned fortune-telling in the District of Columbia. The arguments nearly turned into physical violence, and the police had to be called several times. A clown saved 300 children during the deadliest avalanche in history. Only 400 people survived out of approximately 18,000 residents in the town of Yungay, Peru. The children were at the circus, and the clown guided them to higher ground moments before the avalanche destroyed the entire town. In 1976, 3 men kidnapped a bus full of schoolchildren with the goal of demanding a $5 million ransom. They tried to make the call to demand the money, but the line was busy and they eventually fell asleep. By the time they woke up, the children had freed themselves and were safe. The average cost of obtaining a driver's license in Germany is approximately 3,000 euros. The total includes government fees, examinations, learning materials, driving lessons, and enrollment costs. It takes more than 60 days to climb Mount Everest. A traditional expedition can last around 2 months because climbers do not ascend directly to the summit. Much of the time is spent acclimatizing, making ascents and descents between different camps so the body can gradually adapt to the reduced availability of oxygen. Most attempts are made during brief windows of good weather, especially in May. The final stretch passes through the so-called death zone, located above about 26,250 feet, where the human body can no longer fully acclimatize and every additional hour increases physical strain. In 2003, 2 Scottish sisters took out a £1 million insurance policy in case they immaculately conceived the second coming of Christ. They paid £100 a year until 2006, when the insurance company canceled the policy. A French waiter claimed to have invented crêpes Suzette by accident while preparing a dish for the future King Edward VII. The story says that the liquors in the crepe dish accidentally caught fire, but after tasting it, he decided that the flavor had improved and served it anyway. A court case in Iceland involving a mixed martial arts gym and an injured customer was decided in favor of the gym based on a clause contained in a 13th century legal manuscript. During World War II, American comedian Red Fox avoided the draft by eating half a bar of soap before his physical examination, a trick that caused him to experience heart palpitations. A group of Turkish garbage collectors created a library from discarded books. It is located in Ankara. The initiative began when sanitation workers started rescuing books they found in the trash and saving them to share with their coworkers. Over time, city residents began donating more books, and the collection grew to include thousands of volumes. The library was installed in a former brick factory where shelves and reading areas were set up. Its collection includes literature, children's books, scientific texts, and books in different languages, and some volumes are also donated to schools and other institutions. In Japan, Some restaurants and attractions are charging foreign tourists higher prices than local residents to manage increased demand without placing an additional burden on the local population. In the year 200 AD, Roman Emperor Septimius Severus banned all-female gladiatorial combat, reportedly after hearing lewd jokes directed at women during athletic competitions. He feared that the spectacle encouraged disrespect toward all women. The cancellation of the Bracero program between the United States and Mexico indirectly led to the production of bland supermarket tomatoes. The end of the program, which facilitated migrant labor, pushed farmers to adopt mechanical harvesting, which only worked with tougher and less flavorful tomatoes. In 1982, a Boeing 747 lost all 4 of its engines and had its windshield sandblasted by volcanic ash after flying through a volcanic eruption in Indonesia. The pilot landed at night with limited visibility and later commented that it had been a bit like navigating up a badger's backside. The state of Florida had to create a law banning dwarf tossing contests in establishments where alcoholic beverages are served. Although pad thai noodles were popularized by the Thai government in the 1940s as part of an effort to conserve rice after a major flood, the first mention of pad thai in a cookbook did not appear until the 1960s. In 2023, a giant pumpkin named Michael Jordan broke the world record for the heaviest pumpkin at the World Championship Pumpkin Weigh-Off in California. Travis Ginger, a horticulture teacher from Minnesota, won $30,000 in prize money by presenting a pumpkin weighing about 2,749 pounds, surpassing the previous record by about 46 pounds. Weezer bassist Matt Sharp had never sung before joining the band and was immediately given a demanding vocal part, singing an octave higher than lead singer Rivers Cuomo. To learn how to harmonize, he and the band sang barbershop quartet songs, and Sharp learned his part. The FCC prohibits broadcasters from using fake emergency alert system tones or alerts in television programs or commercials. The trailer for the movie Olympus Has Fallen in 2013 resulted in a $1.9 million fine for cable companies for including a fake tone from this system. The last communist leader of East Germany, Egon Krenz, is still alive. He spent 4 years in prison for crimes committed as a high-ranking politician in East Germany. He also continues to defend the former East Germany, is pro-Russian, and believes that the Cold War never ended. Although the country of El Salvador was named in reference to Jesus by Spanish conquistadors, the original name given by the indigenous peoples of the area was Cuscatlan, meaning the place of precious jewels. In 1853, linguist and explorer Richard Francis Burton disguised himself as a Muslim and performed the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca required of all Muslims. He later wrote a book about his experiences. Port Hedland, a small town in northwestern Australia, is home to the second-largest bulk export port in the world and the #1 port in Australia by tonnage volume, with annual traffic of more than 500 million tons of iron ore, most of it bound for China. In Mongolia, humans rank 5th among the most abundant medium to large mammals. The order is sheep, goats, cattle, horses, humans, and camels. There are 20 head of livestock per person in Mongolia, although this figure fluctuates from year to year and does not include wildlife. In 1902, when the town of Chicken, Alaska grew large enough to be given a name, there were many ptarmigans in the area, so the word ptarmigan was suggested as the name. However, they could not agree on the spelling, so they decided to call it chicken instead. A man sued his own search warrant and won the case in the Supreme Court, under the title Marcus versus Search Warrant. He believed the warrant was too vague and could not sue any of the officers because they had acted within the law. The movie The Grudge is part of the Japanese Ju-on horror film franchise, all directed by the same director, who found success with these movies in Japan and then brought them to Hollywood. To prevent hardware disease, farmers have cows swallow magnets to attract and hold any metal they may ingest in the fields. The Malaysian version of rock, paper, scissors is called 1-2 som, and it uses rock, water, and bird. Water is represented with an open palm, just like paper, while the bird is represented by bringing the tips of all 5 fingers together to form a beak. Rock destroys the bird drinks the water, and the water sinks the rock. Aircraft carriers have barricades installed, essentially giant tennis nets, to catch fighter jets that fail to engage the arresting cables while landing. They are not used for aircraft that simply miss the cables, since pilots are expected to take off again if they fail to catch any of them, which is why they apply full power when touching down. There is a form of water in which all the hydrogen atoms are deuterium, creating heavy water. This makes it heavier than ordinary water and gives it different physical and chemical properties. Until the 19th century, all major banks in the United Kingdom were required to have their headquarters within a 10-minute walk of the Bank of England. This was done so that, in the event of a financial crisis, the directors of each bank could easily meet. The movie Dodgeball included a joke about a fictional sports channel called ESPN8, The Ocho, that broadcast little-known sports. In 2017, ESPN launched a real programming block called ESPN8, The Ocho, which usually airs in August each year. There is a candy desk in the United States Senate. It is a tradition in which one of the desks is filled with candy from the home state of the senator who occupies it, allowing members of the Senate to help themselves. The astronomical unit is a unit of length equivalent to the distance between Earth and the Sun, measuring exactly 92,955,807 miles. It is also a fundamental component in defining another unit of astronomical measurement, the parsec. There is a bridge in Australia called the Montague Street Bridge that is about 9 feet 10 inches high and has 26 warning signs. Despite this, trucks crash into it so frequently that it has become famous for that very reason. A Burger King restaurant in Rego Park, New York, dressed up as McDonald's for Halloween in 2016. Leonard Cohen wrote around 150 different verses for the song Hallelujah, and even performed different versions at various concerts. Zelda Fitzgerald used to make fun of the size of F. Scott Fitzgerald's private parts so much that he asked Ernest Hemingway to examine them in a public restroom. Hemingway told him they were a normal size. Rikers Island, the largest jail complex in New York City, is located only about 420 feet from a runway at LaGuardia Airport. Rachel Wall was the last woman to be hanged in Massachusetts in the 18th century. She tricked sailors by crying out for help, and when people came to rescue her, her crew killed them and stole their belongings. She was later arrested for attempting to tear out a young woman's tongue, as well as for robbery. She asked to be tried as a pirate. Project Artichoke was a mind control program organized by the intelligence divisions of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and FBI. The goal was to determine whether a person could be forced to commit murder involuntarily. It also studied forced morphine addiction, hypnosis, and amnesia. It was succeeded by the better-known MK Ultra program. After Hurricane Katrina, residents decorated their refrigerators. The Katrina refrigerator, which was taped shut and left at the curb, became a community form of street art as well as a means of political and creative expression. The word yenta does not actually refer to a Jewish matchmaker. It is a proper Yiddish name for women that became associated with the profession of matchmaking because of the musical Fiddler on the Roof. The world's first hard drive, the IBM 350, was introduced in 1956. It was leased to companies for $37,600 per month, adjusted to $2024 dollars. It weighed 1 ton and had a capacity of 3.75 megabytes, roughly equivalent to the size of a small PDF file. British climber Alan Hinks had to be rescued by helicopter from Nanga Parbat in 1997 when flour from a burned chapati, a type of flatbread, got into his nose and made him sneeze so violently that he suffered a herniated disc. He waited 10 days in severe pain before being rescued and has since been known as the Chapati Man. Glenn Hughes, the American singer who was the original Leatherman character in the disco group Village People, was buried wearing his leather outfit at St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale, New York. Jerry Springer was elected to the Cincinnati City Council in 1971, but was forced to resign 3 years later after admitting that he had hired a sex worker. He was re-elected the following year by a large majority of the vote. The Triforce was a 2002 arcade system board based on GameCube hardware and jointly developed by Sega, Nintendo, and Namco. The first person to discover viruses was plant biologist Martinus Beijerinck. Before his discovery, scientists believed they were simply a very small type of bacteria. In 1898, Beijerinck studied tobacco mosaic disease and showed that the responsible agent could pass through filters capable of trapping bacteria. He described it as a different infectious agent and used the term virus to refer to it. His research helped establish virology as a new scientific field. Decades later, the development of the electron microscope made it possible to observe viruses directly and reveal structures too small for traditional optical microscopes. There has not been a Major League Baseball player who regularly played catcher while throwing left-handed since Jack Clemens, who played from 1884 to 1900. Clemens was also the first catcher to wear a chest protector. Gordon Ramsay stole from the restaurant where he worked and blamed his mentor, Marco Pierre White, to prevent himself from being hired as White's replacement. In 1998, business magnate Bill Daniels donated his private mansion, called Cable Land, to serve as the official residence of the mayor of Denver. It has never been used for that purpose. Al Pacino, who played Michael Corleone in The Godfather, grew up living with his grandparents, who immigrated from Corleone, Italy. His childhood nickname was Sonny. The Huckleberry Hound Show by Hanna-Barbera was the first animated series to win an Emmy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Children's Programming. It received the award in 1960. Hoarding disorder was not recognized as a disorder until the DSM-5 was published in 2013. Many believe that the television show Hoarders, which premiered in 2006, influenced a considerable amount of scientific research that led to its official inclusion in the manual. Mickey Mantle, a Hall of Fame center fielder, tore his anterior cruciate ligament during his rookie year in the 1951 World Series. He played the remaining 18 years of his professional career with that ligament torn. The World Wide Web was invented in 1989 at CERN. The web was originally conceived and developed to meet the demand for automated information sharing among scientists at universities and institutes around the world. Frank Abagnale, the real-life inspiration for the movie Catch Me If You Can, made up most of his famous exploits as a con man, and much of his story was fabricated. The Air Force has a program designed to keep B-52 bombers flying for more than 100 years from the time they were built. The RMS Lusitania, after being torpedoed, sank in broad daylight, within sight of the coast, in just 18 minutes, killing 1,197 people. 4 of the last 7 governors of Illinois have been imprisoned. The living beings that have traveled the farthest into space and returned to Earth are not humans. They were 2 tortoises launched on the Zond 5 mission in 1968. They orbited the moon and returned safely. The Wright brothers only flew together once in 1910. This is because their father feared losing both sons in an air accident, so he gave them special permission only that one time. From then on, they usually flew separately as a precaution. By that time, they had already perfected much of their aeronautical technology and performed public demonstrations, which helped establish aviation as a viable innovation in various countries. Writer and director Oliver Stone received a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for his service in the Vietnam War. He served as an infantry soldier in active combat and was wounded on 2 occasions, experiences that later influenced several of his films, where he portrays war with a raw approach based on personal experiences. New Zealand adventurer Chloe Phillips Harris was detained and denied entry into Kazakhstan in 2016 because officials did not believe New Zealand existed since the map in the detention room was incorrect and did not include the country. You can be prosecuted for making death threats written entirely with emojis. In several countries, courts have considered that context and intent behind the messages are most important, even if they contain no words. In the United States, for example, under the First Amendment, credible threats are not protected as free speech. Recent cases have shown that combinations of emojis can be interpreted as intimidating messages if a reasonable person perceives them as a real threat. The proper medical term for burping is eructation. It is also used in clinical contexts to describe the release of gas accumulated in the stomach through the esophagus, something completely normal in digestion. In medicine, when it occurs too frequently or is accompanied by other symptoms, it may be related to digestive problems such as reflux or excessive air swallowing while eating. The most expensive internet domain ever sold is business.com, which was sold for $7.5 million. It belonged to a person who had purchased it in 1996 for only $150,000. In 2012, a man sued Pepsi after finding a mouse in his Mountain Dew. However, Pepsi fought and won the case, proving that any mouse would have dissolved inside a can of Mountain Dew after 30 days, and that this can was purchased 74 days after being manufactured. Think about that the next time you drink Mountain Dew. When important Vikings died, they were placed in a funeral ship along with their clothes and jewelry, where they were buried or set on fire and pushed out to sea. These rituals symbolized the journey to the afterlife and the status of the deceased, and in some cases, they also included weapons, animals, and even servants. Archaeological findings in places such as Oseberg have revealed surprising details about these ceremonies and the life of the Viking elite. When the video game Castlevania was adapted for release in North America, Nintendo of America had to remove all religious symbols due to censorship policies. They removed most of the Christian crosses that appeared in the game, which was difficult because it is a game about vampires, and there was even a weapon shaped like a cross. Robert Hubert was executed in 1666 for starting the Great Fire of London by claiming he threw an incendiary bomb through a bakery window. This was despite being severely disabled, the bakery having no windows, and it being proven at his trial that he was not even in the country at that time. The Titan beetle, known as Titanus gigas, is the largest beetle known in the Amazon rainforest and one of the largest insects in the world. It can grow up to 6.5 inches long. It has mandibles that can easily snap a pencil in half. Despite its size, adults rarely feed and live for a short time, while their larvae spend years hidden inside decaying wood before emerging. Canada did not plan to send a hockey team to the 1948 Olympic Games, so they sent Air Force personnel to represent the country. But surprisingly, they were so good that they won the gold medal. Jamaica, Colombia, and St. Lucia are the only countries in the world where it is more likely that a boss is a woman than a man. The human small intestine is 20 feet long and about 1 inch in diameter. Despite its name, it is the longest organ in the digestive system and is folded inside the abdomen to take up less space. Its inner surface is covered with millions of villi that greatly increase the area for nutrient absorption, allowing the body to make the most of the food we consume. Until 1999, the American Express Black Card was only a myth. It did not actually exist. However, it attracted so much attention that they created a real, ultra-exclusive black card for millionaires that still exists today, and other banks adopted the concept shortly afterward. Niccolò Paganini, considered by many to be the greatest violin virtuoso of all time, was so skilled that in the early 1800s, people began to question whether he had sold his soul to the devil for his talent. In fact, he was forced to publish letters from his mother to him to prove he had human parents. Australian truck driver Bill Morgan had a nearly fatal accident when he was crushed in a truck crash and suffered a heart attack. But I say nearly fatal because he was clinically dead for more than 14 minutes. However, he survived after being in a coma for 12 days. His luck does not end there either. He also won the lottery twice. With the first winning scratch ticket, he won a car valued at $17,000, and during a recreation for a Melbourne television program, he bought another ticket and won a jackpot of $170,000. When wolf packs howl together, they do so in different tones to create harmonies, making them sound like there are more wolves and helping drive away threats from their territory. On his deathbed in 1778, French philosopher Voltaire was asked to renounce Satan, to which he replied that now is not the time to make new enemies, which are believed to have been his last words. The oldest carousel in the country is the Flying Horses Carousel, located in Oak Bluffs on Martha's Vineyard. It was built in 1876 and is still in operation. It is one of the 20 carousels that survive that includes a ring machine, and people who grab the ring get a free ride. Charles Darwin married his cousin Emma Wedgwood. They had 10 children, but 3 of them died due to various health issues. This helped him understand how offspring of genetically similar parents could have health effects, contributing to the theory of evolution he later published. A German engineering company developed an innovative, cable-free elevator system based on magnetic technology, capable of moving not only vertically, but also horizontally. This advance, known as multi, was tested in a specialized tower and represents a significant change in building design, allowing greater efficiency and new architectural possibilities. The smallest snake species in the world is Leptotyphlops carli, which is found on the Caribbean island of Barbados. An average adult measures just under 4 inches long and is as thin as a strand of spaghetti. It lives underground and feeds mainly on ant and termite larvae, which makes it difficult to observe in the wild. There is evidence that approximately every 1,000 years, giant tsunamis occur in Switzerland's freshwater lakes due to landslides. The last of these events occurred in 1601. In 1978, Soviet geologists discovered the Lykov family in Siberia, who had lived completely isolated from the world for decades. They had retreated into the taiga in 1936 to avoid religious persecution, and since then had had no contact with other people, developing a completely self-sufficient lifestyle in extreme conditions. In 2012, the Australian government conducted research for tobacco product packaging. They determined that the color Pantone 448C, also known as opaque couche, is the most offensive color to place alongside health warnings associated with smoking. They used it to make cigarette packs look as unpleasant as possible to discourage people from smoking. According to fossil records, the oldest relative of penguins existed 60 million years ago. This means their ancestor survived the mass extinction that eliminated the dinosaurs. A parking meter officer in Salem, Oregon, was caught stealing $90,000 in quarters. Bank staff became suspicious because he regularly deposited large amounts of coins into his personal bank account while still wearing his parking enforcement uniform. Jellyfish eat and defecate through the same opening. This opening functions as both mouth and anus at the same time, connected to an internal cavity where digestion occurs. Since they do not have a complete digestive system like other animals, they process food in a simpler way and expel waste through the same place, which is common in primitive marine organisms. In a campaign for the release of the video game Mass Effect 3, the company Electronic Arts launched copies of the game into space using weather balloons equipped with GPS signals. Shortly afterward, fans managed to track the balloons and obtain copies of the game before its official release. Mexican shamans began using Coca-Cola in their religious rituals to heal worshippers. When Pepsi discovered this, they offered commissions to shamans for using Pepsi instead. In some indigenous communities, especially in the state of Chiapas, these drinks were incorporated into traditional rituals because the bubbles are associated with expelling evil spirits. The only known albino gorilla to have lived was Snowflake. He was born in the wild but was captured in 1966 by villagers and lived at the Barcelona Zoo. He died of skin cancer in 2003, and according to Spanish researchers, Snowflake was the result of inbreeding between possibly an uncle and a niece. Bluetooth is named after Harald Bluetooth, the king of Denmark from 1,000 years ago. Even the logo is made from his initials in the Nordic runic alphabet. The heaviest human ever recorded was John Brower Minnock, who weighed 1,399 pounds. He later lost approximately 924 pounds, the greatest human weight loss ever documented. His case was managed under strict medical supervision in a hospital, as his condition was associated with severe metabolic disorder and extreme fluid retention. The weight reduction took over a year and required a controlled diet, constant care, and specialized follow-up. Kangaroos cannot move backward. The combination of their muscular legs, large feet, and tails can help kangaroos move forward and jump effectively, but these appendages also prevent them from going in reverse. Their tail acts as a powerful support for balance and even propulsion, and together with their hind legs, forms a structure designed almost exclusively for forward movement, making them excellent jumpers in open terrain. The term redhead comes from the English word redhead used to refer to people with orange-toned hair, but they called it red because there was no separate word for the color orange until the year 1540. The Great Pyramids of Egypt actually shone like crystal at one point. 4,000 years ago, artisans had the task of polishing the stone surfaces to perfection. They were originally covered with polished white limestone, which intensely reflected sunlight, making them visible from great distances. Over time, much of that casing was removed or eroded, especially after earthquakes and the reuse of materials in nearby constructions. So today, only small sections near the top of some pyramids remain. There were 12 confirmed dogs on the RMS Titanic. Unfortunately, only 3 of them survived. Most belonged to first-class passengers and traveled in special areas of the ship. Some owners tried to save them during the evacuation, and those that survived did so because they were small enough to be carried into lifeboats without being noticed. Only one airplane was allowed to fly in the United States on September 11, 2001, after the attacks on the Twin Towers. A plane traveling from San Diego to Miami, carrying a special antidote for venom from a poisonous snake bite, was escorted at all times by 2 fighter jets. In South Korea, Children under 17 are blocked from playing online games past midnight, which is monitored by their Korean Social Security number. This measure, known as the shutdown law, was implemented in 2011 to reduce video game addiction among minors. However, over time it faced criticism for its effectiveness and the use of personal data, and was eventually abolished in 2021, replaced by more flexible parental control systems. According to the World Health Organization, mental health problems have been a growing concern in different parts of the world over the past decades. For this reason, increasing importance is being placed on prevention, access to psychological support, and awareness, with the goal of helping people and improving their emotional well-being. The reason why the trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard was televised and became a trend, unlike other important trials, is because in the United States, it is strictly prohibited to record in federal court, and this viral trial took place in a local court, specifically in the state of Virginia. In federal cases, only official transcripts and courtroom sketches can be seen. Research conducted at Stanford University concluded that a racially diverse group is able to solve problems more effectively than a group of a single race. Studies show that diverse groups tend to consider a wider range of perspectives, reducing errors in judgment. For example, in financial environments, diverse groups are 58% more likely to correctly value assets than homogeneous groups. The Komodo dragon is the national animal of Indonesia. This enormous reptile, known scientifically as Varanus komodoensis, can reach several meters in length and has a bite with bacteria and toxins that weaken its prey. It mainly inhabits islands such as Komodo and Rinca, where it is a protected species and one of the country's main natural attractions. Butterflies attach their eggs with a glue they produce that holds them in place without breaking. Scientists have been studying its chemical composition to create a similar adhesive, but they have not succeeded. Actor Don Johnson once asked the famous journalist Hunter S. Thompson what the sound of one hand clapping was, and Hunter S. Thompson responded by approaching and hitting Johnson on the head. I guess that answers the question. Fireflies are actually beetles, not flies. Most of them have wings and belong to the same family as glowworms. Their characteristic glow is produced through a chemical reaction called bioluminescence, which they use to communicate and attract mates. Each species has its own flashing pattern, which allows them to recognize each other even in the dark. There is a heavy metal band made of robots called Compressor Head. It was created in 2013 in Berlin, Germany. The robots really play their instruments. The drummer has 4 arms, and the guitarist has 78 fingers. Together, they weigh 3,307 pounds. Believe it or not, outer space is only an hour away if you could drive a car straight into the sky at 60 miles per hour. This is based on the so-called Kármán line, located about 62 miles above sea level, which is considered the conventional boundary of space. Although it is a simple way to imagine the distance, in practice, reaching it requires advanced aerospace technology, as factors like gravity, lack of oxygen, and air resistance make a direct trip impossible. Naked mole rats are rodents but live like many insects. They live in colonies and are led by a queen or dominant rat. The queen is the only female that reproduces and has offspring. The rest act as workers or soldiers, taking care of digging tunnels, searching for food, and protecting the group. This social organization is very rare among mammals and more closely resembles that of ants or bees, which makes them especially interesting for scientific research. The rarest Olympic medal is the Pierre de Coubertin medal, also known as the True Spirit of Sportsmanship medal. It has only been awarded 19 times since 1964 and is given to athletes who demonstrate exceptional Olympic spirit. Part of the crew working on American Horror Story Freak Show had to leave the set at times because Twisty the Clown was too terrifying. Others reported nightmares after filming. Alaska has its own version of Groundhog Day, called Marmot Day. This is because Alaska does not have groundhogs. Instead, they celebrate local marmots as a symbol of the change of season, and the holiday coincides with the same day as Groundhog Day. The word vaccine comes from the Latin root for cow. This is due to the discovery that smallpox could be prevented in people inoculated with cowpox, a much less harmful variant. Cornelius Mike Anderson helped rob a Burger King employee in 1999 and was ordered to serve 13 years in prison, but no one ever went for him. So he continued living his life in St. Louis, and 12 years later, the prison was preparing for his release, only to realize that he had never been arrested in the first place. There are mushrooms that actually glow in the dark. The mushrooms, which are found in Brazil, are part of the genus Mycena, a group that includes about 500 species worldwide. Of these, only 33 are known to be bioluminescent. Their greenish glow is produced by a chemical reaction similar to that of fireflies and can attract insects that help disperse their spores, facilitating reproduction in humid and dark environments. When we are nervous or anxious, we tend to overestimate how much people notice our reactions due to what is called the illusion of transparency. Simply being aware of this can increase confidence. In 2015, McDonald's recorded for the first time in decades a year in which it closed more restaurants than it opened in the United States. This change reflected a stage of adjustments within the company, marked by declining sales and the need to renew its strategy to adapt to new consumer preferences. To protect the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea, Xbox Kinect sensors were used for a time by South Korea, since traditional sensors sometimes detected false signals such as falling leaves. A Japanese soldier, Hiro Onoda, remained hidden on an island for almost 30 years after the end of World War II. Convinced that the conflict was still ongoing, he continued to follow orders until in 1974, his former commander personally traveled to inform him that the war had ended and officially relieve him of duty. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 265,000 people die each year from burns that occur mainly in the home or workplace. Most of these cases are concentrated in low and middle-income countries, where safety conditions are more limited. Many of these deaths could be prevented with basic measures such as safe installations, risk education, and access to timely medical care. Pumbaa was the first character to fart in a Disney movie, something uncommon in Disney films at that time. To become a police officer in Norway, 3 years of study and training at a university are required, where graduates receive a degree in police studies. Some college students in Cleveland live rent-free in a nursing home. This unique living situation benefits both parties, as studies have shown that contact with younger people helps combat dementia, while students save on housing costs. The Tanbodhai Pagoda Temple in Myanmar contains more than 582,000 Buddhas. These images are arranged in rows and niches that cover almost all the surfaces of the temple, creating an impressive visual effect. The structure stands out for its bright colors and detailed design, making it one of the most striking religious sites in the country. 10,000 years ago, lions were the second most common land mammal and existed almost everywhere. They lived in Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Jim Wenke, a blind man, and Jia Haisha, a double amputee, planted 10,000 trees together in the village of Yeli in northern China, and they plan to plant another 10,000. They work as a team, overcoming their limitations, as one contributes vision and the other strength to carry out the tasks. Their effort has helped restore degraded lands and reduce soil erosion, becoming an example of cooperation and perseverance recognized in their region. The nest of the swiftlet is made from the bird's own saliva. In Asian countries, bird's nest is boiled into a soup and considered a delicacy. A single bowl of bird's nest soup can cost around $100. That is a lot of money for bird saliva. Composer Gioacchino Rossini had to write a section of the opera, Ciro and Babylon, specifically so that a singer would only have to sing a single note the entire time. This was because he realized she sang out of tune. In the end, the performance received ovations and applause. Several studies have shown that coffee prevents cancer, reduces the risk of diabetes, and can improve health in general. The microwave oven was invented by accident in 1945. Engineer Percy Spencer was working in a laboratory testing magnetrons. One day, while working near magnetrons that produced microwaves, he noticed that a chocolate bar in his pocket was melting. That is how the microwave oven was born. The Japanese invaded the island of Taiwan in 1895 with the intention of turning it into a model colony with a high quality of life. As a result, over time, people in Taiwan did not develop resentment toward the Japanese, unlike in other places they invaded. There is a set of 19 questions among doctors, such as whether they have the correct patient and which operation they are performing, known as the Safe Surgery Checklist, which has been shown to reduce surgical deaths by more than 40%. This tool was promoted by the World Health Organization and is applied at key moments before, during, and after surgery. It includes confirming identity, surgical site, allergies, and equipment availability, and has been adopted in hospitals worldwide as a standard practice to improve patient safety. Greenland is the largest island in the world. It has an area of 822,700 square miles. Despite its size, much of its surface is covered by a massive ice sheet that reaches miles in thickness. Its population is relatively small and is concentrated along the coast, where conditions are more habitable and life depends largely on the sea. In South Africa, a car accessory that was a flamethrower was once sold. It was designed to scare away thieves and was completely legal, but it was not very successful. Until 1974, it was illegal to appear in public in Chicago if you were ugly. This curiosity comes from an old ordinance known as the Ugly Law, which existed in several U.S. cities and sought to prohibit people with visible deformities from begging in public spaces. Over time, these laws were criticized as discriminatory and dehumanizing, and were eventually removed as civil rights and social inclusion advanced. Balut is a national delicacy in the Philippines. It is a fertilized duck egg, or duck embryo, that is boiled and eaten directly from the shell. It is usually consumed hot, accompanied by salt, vinegar, or spices, and it is common to find it at street stalls at night. For many, it is an accessible source of protein and part of culinary traditions passed down through generations. Until recently, there was a law in the city of Paris that required local bakeries to alternate their vacation days so there would be enough bread in the city during holidays. Psychopaths are only able to perceive the positive consequences of their actions, as opposed to the negative ones. Studies in neuroscience and psychology suggest that they can recognize negative consequences but show a lower emotional response to them, especially in areas of the brain related to fear and empathy. This can influence their decision-making, making them more prone to take risks. Scientists discovered the earliest evidence of human footprints outside of Africa on the coast of Norfolk in eastern England. The footprints were found on the shores of Hapesburg and were more than 800,000 years old. In China, it has become popular for students to rent fake parents to take them to meetings with teachers to avoid the embarrassment of their real parents seeing their grades and scolding them. They hire them online, and they can charge up to $8 per hour. There is a series of concrete arrows 68.90 feet long from San Francisco to New York City, designed to direct air traffic in the pre-digital days. They were originally installed in 1924. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 68 children, or more specifically, 1 in 42 boys and 1 in 189 girls, has autism spectrum disorder, which includes a wide range of symptoms, abilities, and different levels of disability. The texture added to science fiction spaceship models is called greeble and is intended to make them appear more complex. A real spaceship would not have this texture. In Japan, when a serious incident occurs in spaces like trains or buildings, costs associated with service disruption, cleaning, and other expenses can be generated. In some cases, authorities or companies may seek financial compensation related to those damages. The Setere Mawe tribe initiates its boys at the age of 13 by making them wear gloves made of bullet ants for 10 minutes. They are repeatedly stung, which is incredibly painful, but they must not scream if they want to be declared men. A supermarket in the Netherlands launched an advertising campaign in which they implemented a rule that if more than 4 people were waiting in line to pay and no other register was open, you could take everything you had purchased for free. There is a statue of the famous inventor and electrical engineer Nikola Tesla that emits free Wi-Fi, located in Silicon Valley. Inside the statue is also a time capsule to be opened in the year 2043. This statue is located in Palo Alto and was funded through a public online campaign. In addition to offering free connection, the monument serves as a tribute to Tesla's legacy in developing alternating current and modern technology. A year on the planet Mercury lasts 88 Earth days. This is because it is the closest planet to the Sun and orbits at high speed. Interestingly, a day on Mercury, meaning the time it takes to rotate on its axis, is much longer than its year, which causes extreme cycles of heat and cold on its surface. There are studies with evidence that once the influenza virus infects someone, it can influence the person and cause them to be more social in order to increase its chances of spreading. The idea for the movie The Human Centipede first sequence arose, according to its director Tom Six, from a dark joke about extreme punishments. Over time, that idea became a film project that drew attention for its unusual and provocative concept. In the world of insects, There are curious behaviors related to reproduction. In some species, such as the praying mantis, the female may feed on the male after mating. That is why males remain still to avoid being eaten. Wrestlers Jeff Hardy and Mick Foley have an agreement with science. They agreed to donate their brains to help with research on concussions in entertainment and impact sports. When Google first announced Gmail on April 1st with an incredible 1 gigabyte of free storage in 2004, which at the time seemed impossible with Hotmail offering only 2 megabytes, people thought it was an April Fool's joke. At that time, most emails had very small limits, so the offer seemed exaggerated. However, the service was real and marked a major shift in the industry, prompting other platforms to significantly increase their storage capacity. Optical illusion speed bumps are being used to slow down drivers. One example is a three-dimensional image of a small girl chasing a ball. This was first introduced in Vancouver, and now other provinces and states in the United States are experimenting with it. In 1973, Concorde pilots chased a solar eclipse at a speed of 1,553 miles per hour. This allowed them to extend their view of the eclipse from 7 minutes to 74 minutes. Today's first-year high school students were not even born at the beginning of the 2000 years. Most of these students were actually born around 2013 or 2014, so they have grown up completely surrounded by digital technology, with early access to the internet, video platforms, and social networks as a natural part of their daily lives. In 2014, a parking space in London was sold for £400,000. That was 2.5 times the cost of the average home in the United Kingdom. The sounds made by lizards change when they inhale helium gas, just like humans. This indicates that reptiles have vocal mechanisms similar to ours. McDonald's in Hong Kong will soon host cheap weddings for couples at a cost of around $12 and will actually provide food, drinks, and an apple pie for 50 people. If you want your marriage to end before it begins, do this. There is a species of fungus named after SpongeBob. Spongiforma squarepantsii was named by researchers at San Francisco State University because it reminded them of the cartoon character. It has a sea sponge-like shape, large holes, and is orange in color. Before catching fire in 1937, the Hindenburg airship had already completed 17 transatlantic trips without incident. Despite this, after the accident, the era of airships ended abruptly because people no longer considered them safe. Studies in the United Kingdom on car accidents concluded that short female drivers who sit close to the steering wheel are most likely to die from an airbag. So, if you are a short woman, be very careful. Angel Falls in Venezuela was accidentally discovered in 1935 by Jimmy Angel, a bush pilot who was searching for gold and diamonds. That is where it got its name. In reality, the waterfall was already known by the indigenous Pemon people, who called it Querepacupay Vena. But it was Angel who brought it to the world's attention after flying over it during an expedition in the Gran Sabana. Owls have special feathers on their wings that allow them to fly almost silently, helping them avoid detection. Some owls that mainly eat fish do not have this adaptation because fish cannot hear. Studies conducted by the University of Toronto concluded that the more a person trusts others, the better they are at detecting liars. This effect has been linked to the idea that those who trust more tends to pay greater attention to social cues and subtle behavioral changes. Additionally, some research suggests that these people process interpersonal information more fluidly, which can help them notice inconsistencies in gestures, tone of voice, or responses, especially in everyday interactions. There is an extremely rare congenital condition called polyorchidism, where a man is born with more than 2 testicles. In most documented cases, the additional testicle does not cause serious symptoms and is usually detected by chance during medical examinations. Even so, doctors typically monitor the condition to rule out possible complications and ensure normal development. The tusk of narwhals, which has always been studied by biologists, was discovered to actually be a tooth that grows through the upper lip. It is soft and covered with tiny holes filled with water, making it a sensory organ similar to a nose or eyes. Economics professors at Emory University discovered that those who spend less than the average on their weddings and wedding rings have lower divorce rates. This finding comes from an observational study that found a correlation between lower spending and longer-lasting marriages, possibly because it reduces initial financial stress. In 1998, Sony had to recall 700,000 video cameras because customers discovered that the camera gave them the ability to see through clothing. They found that if the infrared lens was used in daylight, they could see details such as tattoos, underwear, and parts of the body through certain types of clothing. Actor Arnold Schwarzenegger was so determined to exercise when he was young that he often broke into local gyms during weekends when they were closed. According to biologist Dr. Sandra Gout from the University of the Sorbonne in Paris, some frogs have developed ultrasonic mating calls that they can use to be heard over roaring water to find a mate. Hawaii is the most geographically isolated place in the world. More than 90% of its native land, plant, and animal species are unique to the islands. This level of endemism exceeds even that of the Galapagos Islands. In 2010, musician Dave Grohl was admitted to a hospital due to an overdose. In reality, he had consumed too much caffeine while recording a new album. The animated series Ed, Edd and Eddy is the longest-running Cartoon Network series. It aired for 10 years, from 1999 to 2009, and concluded with a television movie. Two-thirds of all missions sent to Mars since the first one in 1960 have failed in different ways, but since 2000, most have been successful, including the 3 rovers currently active on the Martian surface. A BBC study found that 56% of pilots fell asleep while flying, and 29% had woken up to discover that the co-pilot was also asleep. These data come from surveys on fatigue in aviation, where some pilots admitted to experiencing brief episodes of sleep, especially on long flights. Presidential candidate Dwight D. Eisenhower was the first to use political advertisements on television. During his campaign in 1952, he created 40 television ads of 20 seconds where he answered questions from the audience. At the Disney theme park, Epcot, they developed a special perfume that smells like snowy Nordic mountains. In addition to selling it, they spray it daily in the park area representing Norway. 100 years ago, there were more women in important positions in Hollywood than today. Half of all movies made between 1911 and 1925 were written by women. The cartoon Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote was created by animator Chuck Jones as a parody and even a mockery of cartoons like Tom and Jerry that were popular at the time, which is why it had absurd tones and impossible physics. Despite this, most people did not notice the irony, and it became extremely popular. The pink cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. were actually a gift from Japan in 1912 as a symbol of friendship between the two nations. They were given by the mayor of Tokyo and planted around the tidal basin, where each spring they attract thousands of visitors. Today, this gesture is celebrated with the National Cherry Blossom Festival, which commemorates the cultural and diplomatic relationship between the two countries. Australian Mark Murray has created a food combination called the ham dog. It is a hamburger and a hot dog combined and has a specially shaped bun. This invention even received a patent for its unique design, since the bun is split to accommodate both items at the same time, creating an unusual hybrid fast food experience. In the movie The Hateful Eight, actor Kurt Russell smashed an authentic Martin guitar from the 1870s that had been loaned from the Martin Guitar Museum. It was supposed to be swapped for a prop before he destroyed it, but unfortunately, no one told Kurt. Jonah Hill was only paid $60,000 for his role in The Wolf of Wall Street due to how much he wanted it. For that role, he received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. According to scientific studies, not sleeping enough or sleeping at irregular times can directly contribute to unhealthy eating habits, such as consuming junk food. This is due to reduced self-control. When portraying an American character, actor Christian Bale, who is English, conducts all press interviews and promotional appearances using an American accent, so as not to confuse the audience. Academics in Great Britain published a study in 2005 claiming that all girls go through a stage where they hate their Barbie dolls and punish them by damaging or breaking them. This was based on a survey of 100 people. If we lose 22 pounds of body fat, of those 22 pounds, 18.5 pounds are converted directly into carbon dioxide and expelled through breathing, while the remaining 3.5 pounds are released as liquid, including sweat and tears. A study at the University of Chicago concluded that people think more rationally in their second language and make better decisions. This effect has been linked to a lower emotional load when processing information in a non-native language, which can reduce cognitive biases in certain situations. Pluto has a heart-shaped region known as Tombaugh Regio, which is made of ice, enormous glaciers of nitrogen, methane, and carbon dioxide. This region is surprisingly active for such a cold world, with surfaces that appear to renew slowly, suggesting internal movements of ice that push and redistribute material over time. Actor Bradley Cooper begged his father to send him to Japan until he turned 21 in order to train to become a ninja. Some real pirates wore eye patches, but not for style. It allowed them to quickly adapt between bright light on deck and darkness below the ship. One eye remained adjusted to darkness at all times. Before joining the original lineup of Guns N' Roses, guitarist Slash auditioned to join the band Poison, but decided to reject them when they told him he had to wear makeup. The last words of famous writer H.G. Wells on his deathbed in 1946 were, "Go away, I am fine." The headpiece worn by the character Scarlet Witch in comics, and now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is not a crown or helmet. It is called a wimple, a garment typically used to cover the hair that was worn by married women in medieval Europe, and is still worn today by some Muslim women and nuns. There is a fully functional 18-karat gold toilet called America at the Guggenheim Museum. It was created by the Italian artist Maurizio Cattelan. It is installed in one of the museum's small single-occupancy restrooms, and visitors are encouraged to use it. According to the World Drug Report, Scotland had the highest rate of cocaine use in the world. South Korea has used giant speakers pointed toward North Korea in the demilitarized zone to play K-pop songs. This was used as a form of psychological propaganda. In Japan, there are robot factories that manufacture robots capable of operating for up to 30 days without human supervision. They are known as lights-out factories because they can function in complete darkness. Keiko, the orca who starred in Free Willy, was released into the wild in July 2002 in Iceland after being in captivity for 23 years. A few weeks after her release, she appeared in a Norwegian fjord from the sea, seeking human contact, and gave children rides on her back. At the Hetaoping Research and Conservation Center for the Giant Panda, in the Wolong Nature Reserve in China, researchers dressed as pandas to prepare panda cubs for their release into the wild. They used costumes to try to prevent the babies from becoming attached to humans. The movie Terminator 2 won an Academy Award. No other sequel has won an Academy Award after the first installment was not even nominated. If you are looking for a job, the application and resume are almost not as important as a reference. In fact, knowing someone who works at the company increases your chances of getting an interview and makes you 40% more likely to get the job than someone with a fancier resume. In 2002, Sesame Workshop created an HIV-positive character to be part of the cast of the South African co-production of Sesame Street. The Muppet was designed to promote tolerance and reduce the stigma associated with being HIV positive. She was a 5-year-old girl who contracted the disease through a contaminated blood transfusion. Michael Jordan once had a clause in his contract called Love of the Game that allowed him to play basketball against anyone, anywhere, and at any time without consequences. At the time, this was unusual, but today, many athletes have adopted similar clauses. Mirrors reflect slightly more green light than other colors due to the material they are made from. This causes them to appear greenish from certain angles, such as when two mirrors reflect each other. In 2008, the Japanese created a silicone toy called Mugen Puchi Puchi, designed to mimic the sensation of popping bubble wrap an infinite number of times. I know many of you got very excited about that. Lay's potato chips have different names around the world. In Mexico, they are called Sabritas. In Colombia, Margarita. In Vietnam, Boca. In Great Britain, Walkers. In Australia, Smiths. In Egypt, Chipsy. And in Israel, Doppelchips. In the early 19th century, Napoleon demanded a method of communication that did not require light or sound. It was called night writing and was developed as a tactile military code. Night writing became the basis for Braille. According to researchers at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland, watching television series and marathons together can bring couples closer. The study found that if they lack mutual friends in the real world, the characters from the shows they watch together become a good substitute. In the original He-Man cartoon from the 1980s, He-Man was not allowed to use his sword or any other weapon. He also could not punch or kick his enemies. This was due to a law that prevented children's programs from showing violence. Instead, he only made plans to defeat his enemies using intelligence. In the early 1930s, Warner Brothers began producing animated shorts specifically to promote music owned by the company. They were called Looney Tunes. The opossum is immune to bee stings, scorpion stings, rattlesnake venom, and toxins such as botulism. This is due to special proteins in its blood that can neutralize certain toxins, which has sparked scientific interest in developing possible antidotes. In addition, they rarely contract rabies, partly because their body temperature is lower than that of other mammals, which makes it harder for the virus to survive. All the gold that has been extracted or found in the entire world would only fill the equivalent size of 4 Olympic swimming pools. John F. Kennedy's grandmother, Mary Josephine Fitzgerald, not only survived her grandson, but was never told about his assassination. Actor Benedict Cumberbatch spent 1 year teaching English to Buddhist monks in a Tibetan monastery in the city of Darjeeling, India, before attending university. Artist Salvador Dalí was obsessed with cauliflowers. He drove around Paris with his car filled with cauliflowers and gave them to people. Later, he explained to a journalist that his fascination was due to the logarithmic curve and fractal patterns of cauliflowers. In Picasso's 1932 painting, The Reading, a woman can be seen resting while holding a book. This painting led to the separation of the painter's marriage after his wife saw the artwork at an exhibition and realized she did not resemble the woman depicted. George Aldrich has worked for NASA for more than 40 years, and his job involves smelling things. This is to ensure that there are no unpleasant odors in the International Space Station or the Space Shuttle. In 2009, Bill Gates released mosquitoes in front of an audience that was there to hear him speak about education and the eradication of malaria. Malaria is transmitted from person to person through mosquito bites. The character Aladdin in the 1992 animated movie of the same name was based on the physical features of actor Tom Cruise, and the movement of his pants was inspired by the pants worn by rapper MC Hammer. Emperor penguins can dive up to 1,837 feet into the ocean. This is deeper than most submarines and more than double the depth an orca can reach. Modern soccer evolved from medieval football, where instead of being played 11 versus 11, each team was an entire village trying by any means to move or kick a ball toward the center of the opposing village. Penguin 1, an organic chemical compound, got its name because its molecular structure resembles a penguin. This type of curious naming is common in organic chemistry, where some researchers name molecules after their visual shape and structural models. The line that separates the top and bottom numbers of a fraction is called the fraction bar. In mathematics, it is also known as a vinculum or division line, since it indicates that the top number must be divided by the bottom number. This notation has been used for centuries and allows for the clear representation of relationships between quantities, from basic operations to more complex expressions in algebra. In the United States presidential elections of 1896, William McKinley won despite campaigning from the front porch of his house in Ohio, while his opponent traveled extensively by railroad, speaking at over 600 events. That must be frustrating. According to Guinness World Records, Bluey, an Australian cattle dog from Rochester, Victoria, in Australia, was the oldest dog ever recorded. He was 29 years and 5 months old. He was born in 1910 and was put down on November 14, 1939. An average office desk can have up to 400 times more bacteria than a toilet. And according to a study, desks, phones, keyboards, and other personal objects belonging to men have 4 times more bacteria than those belonging to women. A university student in 1979 only had to work about 182 hours per year to pay tuition. The average student in 2013 had to work more than 991, and that number keeps rising. Chocolate contains a small amount of caffeine, and if consumed in large quantities, it can cause mild reactions such as changes in heart rate or lack of sleep. Blind people forget many memories since they have no visual images and cannot look at photos to remember. A 3D printing company called Touching Memories prints 3D objects from old photos so that blind people can touch them, feel them, and relive their most cherished moments like never before. Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were born on the same day and year, February 12, 1809. Not only that, but they both loved Shakespeare, both lost their mothers at an early age, and both were abolitionists. There is a plant called Ramonda cerbica that can return to life after being completely dry simply by adding water, which is why it is also called the phoenix plant. Its flowers are violet. The shipping company UPS was founded by 2 teenagers with a bicycle and $100 loaned by a friend in 1907. Today, they have 481,000 employees. In 2010, Mattel manufactured and sold Wonder Woman's invisible jet as a collectible item. The package was an empty plastic case with nothing inside, and the packaging included weights to give the illusion that there was actually something inside. And people bought it. The word laser is an acronym that stands for Light Amplification by Stimulated Emission of Radiation. It comes from the English phrase light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation and began to be used in the mid-20th century after the development of this technology. Today, lasers have applications in medicine, communications, industry, and even in code readers, thanks to their ability to emit coherent and highly precise light. A species of spider was named in honor of actor Harrison Ford. It was called Calpurnia harrisonfordi and was an act of gratitude toward Ford for narrating a documentary for the Natural History Museum of London in 1994. Since 2010, at least 5 Americans have accidentally shot themselves in their genitals. Scientists played rock music to termites in a scientific study and discovered that they ate wood faster. The music accelerated them, but it also proved dangerous for the colony because they neglected other termite duties, such as feeding other members of the colony who needed it. Olympus Mons, located on Mars, is the largest volcano and mountain in the solar system. It is more than 16 miles high, which is 3 times the height of Mount Everest. Its enormous size is due to the low Martian gravity and the absence of tectonic plates, which allowed lava to accumulate for millions of years without shifting. In 1943, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Philadelphia Eagles American football teams merged into a single team called the Steagles. This was due to limited resources during World War II. There is a species of moth that has neither a mouth nor a stomach. They evolved this way because their only purpose is reproduction. They must accomplish this during the approximately 7 days of their lifespan. Pharrell Williams was fired from 3 different McDonald's restaurants when he was 17 for being lazy and stealing chicken nuggets. He later partnered with Justin Timberlake to create the jingle, "I'm Lovin' It." Phobophobia is the abnormal fear of developing a phobia, or the anxiety of showing symptoms of a phobia. This term is used in psychology to describe a cycle in which a person fears their own fear reactions, which can intensify anxiety over time. It is usually related to anxiety disorders and panic attacks, where the anticipation of fear becomes as intense as the fear itself. According to a study, babies who use pacifiers more often have a higher predisposition to ear pain. This is related to pressure changes inside the ear caused by suction. Every December 25th, the residents of the Chumbivilcas province in Peru celebrate Takanakui. This is where men settle grudges from the previous year by challenging each other to bear fist fights. Afterwards, everyone drinks to numb the pain and move forward into the new year. The ice hotel built every year in Sweden is required to install alarms and fire protection systems, despite being made mostly of water. This is due to structural regulations in the country. NASA has conducted many experiments in the Atacama Desert in South America because there are areas where the soil has no moisture and resembles the surface of other planets, such as Mars, to test whether it is possible to grow potatoes there. 65% of smartphone users download 0 apps per month. This figure is often related to the fact that most people already use a fixed set of apps that cover their daily needs, such as social networks, messaging, and entertainment services. Studies on digital behavior also indicate that user retention is concentrated on a few apps, while many others are downloaded, used once, and then forgotten or deleted. David the Bulletsmith, who appeared on the 7th season of America's Got Talent, has been fired from a cannon more than 5,000 times. He is the highest-flying human cannonball in the world today, with his launches setting world records. The company that manufactures most iPhone components, Foxconn, has reduced its workforce in recent years from 110,000 to 50,000 employees because robots were implemented to replace workers in some positions. 43 buildings in New York City have their own postal code due to their size, the number of workers inside, and the amount of money they generate. When James Bond actor Daniel Craig first eloped with his current wife, Rachel Weisz, in 2010, he had a fiancé at the time, and when she found out, she spent $1 million from her credit line in revenge. Saturn's rings are composed of dust, rock, and ice accumulated from passing comets, meteorite impacts on Saturn's moons, and the planet's gravity pulling material from its moons. Most of these particles are water ice, which gives them their characteristic brightness. Although they appear solid from a distance, they are made up of fragments that range from tiny grains to house-sized blocks, all orbiting at high speed around the planet. The scene in the movie The Shawshank Redemption, where Morgan Freeman throws a baseball, took 9 hours to film, during which he had to repeat the throws continuously. He did not complain once during those 9 hours. But the next day, he arrived at filming with his arm immobilized. On April Fool's Day in 1989, billionaire Richard Branson designed a hot air balloon to look like a UFO and hired a short person in an alien costume to exit and scare anyone nearby when it landed. France was one of the first countries to legislate against single-use plastics. A law that came into force in 2020 banned non-biodegradable plastic plates, cups, and utensils as part of the Energy Transition for Green Growth Act. This regulation also reinforced the previous ban on plastic bags in stores and markets, promoting the use of compostable materials and more sustainable solutions throughout the country. The design of Euro banknotes contains fictional bridges drawn to represent different architectural eras in Europe. They were invented to avoid giving more representation to any specific country. But a few years later, all those bridges were actually built in the Netherlands. The common nickname of Jennifer Lopez in parts of Hong Kong and China is Butt Lord. It is not recommended to shower during a thunderstorm, because lightning energy can travel through plumbing systems with the help of water. The band Blink-182 was formed under the name Pennywise Poo Poo Butt Inc., so that their accountants, managers, and lawyers would have to say that when doing business. That is hilarious. On average, every day, 1 out of every 4 people in the world consumes a beverage from the Coca-Cola Company. If you watch any classic Clint Eastwood film, you will often see his character smoking, like Dirty Harry, even though Clint never habitually smoked in real life and practiced a healthy diet and meditation from his youth. It is a tradition in Denmark that if you are still single when you turn 25 years old, you get covered in cinnamon. If you reach 30 without getting married, the tradition continues, but instead of cinnamon, they sometimes use pepper. The most valuable cow of all time is Missy, who was sold in 2019 for $1.2 million. Among the characteristics that made her the most expensive is the quality and quantity of milk she produces, which is 50% more per day than an average cow. On March 26, 1997, 39 members of the Heaven's Gate group made a collective decision based on their spiritual beliefs, as they thought their souls would be taken to a spacecraft following the Hale-Bopp comet. In Greenland, there is only one university with around 160 students. The government pays citizens to study anywhere else in the world, which is why very few remain at the local university. The distance from Mars to the Sun is 128,437,425 miles at its closest point, and 154,845,701 miles at its farthest point. Astronaut Sunita Williams ran the first marathon in space aboard the International Space Station in 2007. She did it simultaneously with the Boston Marathon, where her sister ran. The video game company Tencent Games, known for making the mobile game Clash of Clans, earned more money in 2018 than EA, Activision, Ubisoft, and Nintendo combined. In 1992, thousands of yellow plastic ducks were released from a cargo ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And over the last 23 years, these ducks have appeared in places all over the world and have even been used to track ocean currents. Since merging with the Musical.ly application and expanding to most countries, TikTok surpassed Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Snapchat in downloads and currently has 500 million active users per month. The family of railroad magnate George Pullman was so worried that former employees would desecrate his corpse after his death that they buried him at night in a pit 7.87 feet deep under layers of reinforced concrete with steel in a lead-lined coffin. In the Victorian era, some very young children worked as chimney sweeps since they could enter very narrow chimneys to clean them. It was a dangerous and difficult job that over time raised concern in society and led to changes in laws to better protect minors. Necker Island, located in the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean, was acquired by businessman Richard Branson in 1978 for $180,000, even though the expected auction price was $6 million. Currently, this billionaire lives on the island and does so to avoid paying as many taxes as he would in the United Kingdom. There is a doctor in Nepal named Sanduk Ruit who has restored vision to more than 100,000 people in the developing world. He is known for perfecting low-cost cataract surgery techniques that can be performed in a few minutes and with limited resources. He also helped produce affordable intraocular lenses on a large scale, allowing treatment of patients in remote areas and leading medical campaigns to regions where access to ophthalmologic care is very limited. The bootlace worm is the largest species of ribbonworm. They can grow up to 197 feet long, which is longer than a blue whale. This animal, known scientifically as Lineus longissimus, inhabits shallow marine waters and usually remains hidden under sand or among rocks. In addition, it produces a toxin that helps it immobilize its prey, making it a surprisingly effective predator despite its appearance. There is a higher percentage of left-handed people competing professionally in sports that require fast reactions, such as baseball, cricket, or table tennis, than in slower sports, such as badminton, tennis, or squash. A research article from 2013 concluded that fans of Harry Potter tend to be more open to diversity, politically tolerant, less authoritarian, and less likely to support the use of lethal force or torture. Comedian and actor Jon Stewart proposed to his now wife through a personalized crossword puzzle in the New York Times newspaper. He did this with the help of the publication's crossword editor, Will Shortz. Between 1347 and 1350, the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death, killed 20 million people in Europe. That was 30% of the continent's population at that time. One of Stephen Hawking's life goals was to appear in the television series Star Trek. He achieved this in 1993 and also fulfilled another dream in the scene where he appeared, playing cards with Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Great minds of physics gathered in space. Actor Sean Bean is so afraid of flying that during the filming of The Lord of the Rings, while shooting in remote mountain locations, he would travel by cable car and walk the rest of the way, all while wearing his full costume. Every spring in Sweetwater, Texas, a rattlesnake roundup is held. For 3 days, snake hunters bring their catches, which end up being thousands of snakes, for which they are paid $5 per pound. The Junior Chamber of Commerce started the tradition in 1958 to address snake overpopulation. The 7 wonders of the ancient world coexisted for only 60 years, which ended when the statue of the Colossus of Rhodes was destroyed. The largest farm in the world is located in China, in the city of Mudanjiang. It is mainly dedicated to milk production and has an area similar to the entire country of Portugal. Until 1987, all surgeries performed on babies were done without anesthesia, under the belief that babies were not capable of feeling pain. There are more than 1 million species of insects in the world that have been discovered and categorized, and each year, more than 7,000 new ones are added. Despite this pace, it is believed there are still more than 10 million insect species yet to be discovered. During the filming of the movie Resident Evil Afterlife, a platform with actors collapsed, causing injuries to 16 of them, and when medical services arrived, they had trouble distinguishing who was actually injured because they were dressed as zombies. Breastfed babies defecate more than formula-fed babies because breast milk contains immunoglobulins, substances produced by the body's immune system that function as a natural laxative.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.